KSMO Radio. Time for our spotlight on the Salem Memorial Hospital. Tabitha Stanfast made her way in.
Good
Yay!
morning.
How
Good
are
morning.
you?
I made it. Yes.
Yes, you are. You
I'm
did
doing
make it.
good.
By gosh, by golly. And Tabitha's back in her old stomping grounds back
Yes.
there in the emergency
Back
department.
home. That's what I tell everybody. I came back home.
You could
Yes.
write a song like that.
There you go. Yeah. There's a song in there somewhere.
Down home, back home, whatever you
Yes.
want to call it.
Yes.
You could definitely put a song together. But yes, now, so let me ask you a question. You went through a number of different positions at the hospital, doing a lot of different things.
Yes.
I mean, how diversified was it for you to move from the emergency department with the STEMI and stroke protocol and everything that you really did a lot of work getting set up to those other positions? Did all of that, you kind of feel like you did a lot of that work and you're going to hand it off to somebody else, but you're not ever going to really let go, or what?
Well, I'm going to let go because I can't do all of it. So, yes, absolutely going to let that go. But I really enjoyed learning that was really more than just the emergency department side of things. In the ER we have stroke and STEMI and trauma and not a narrow, because we have to learn a lot,
Right.
but it's really just emergency department centric. And so when I went into quality and risk management, it was about the whole hospital and about other departments that I didn't know a lot about. And so I really enjoyed learning about that. And then bringing some of that back into the emergency department now, some of that education and learning that I did for myself is now, I feel like it's making me a little bit better in the ER as well. So.
And you also served on MRPC board too, did you
Yes,
not?
I'm still, I'm actually right now the vice chair of the Regional Homeland Security Oversight Committee.
Okay.
I've been on that board
Been a while, hasn't it?
probably 12 years or
Yeah.
so now. That's a very important board for our area. RSOC is what we call it. That is, it's from federal dollars. It trickles down to the state, and then it trickles down to the region. So we're a part of Region I in the state of Missouri. We're six counties.
Which follows the highway patrol.
Follows the High
right?
Patrol. We're 6 counties, and we are the board that helps. Like we have currently we have a grant application that's I think was just released this week for the regional dollars. There's typically, we're the smallest region in the area, so they typically have the smallest dollars to spend, but we spend every dollar on regional assets. So Phelps County has the HRST, the Homeland Response Security Team from Rolla City. They do a lot of work with that. The hospital has benefited. We've funded, through RSOC, we've funded our MOSWIN radios, and communications has been a big driver of our regional board. We want the region to be able to communicate with each other within, and that's across discipline. That's law enforcement, hospitals, EMS, fire departments, schools. I think it's 12 disciplines or 12 different types of people that are involved in that board. And Inter-County Electric is one, the commissioners, cities, the mayors, the engineers at the cities and things like that. So it's a very diverse board, but we feel like it's very important work that we do. And it benefits Dent County and the hospital as well. So.
And communication, and just to make it clear, I think a lot of people think, oh, well, communication should be easy. Well, you have different hospitals that use different communication devices. The Highway Patrol uses one. Sheriff's departments use a different one. The hospital uses a different one. County Sheriff's Department, city sheriff's, police departments, they all use different systems sometimes. I know there was a meeting at Denton County Fire Protection District one time to try and organize this all into one. That didn't quite work out the way I think everybody anticipated it would. But there's a need. Obviously, if you have a need for an accident, you need the ambulances, you need the sheriff's department, maybe the highway department, and the fire department may need to be out there too. So emergency services are key to be able to communicate, but there is a lot of work to communicate with everybody, isn't there?
So the Joplin tornado back, a long time ago, really highlighted in the state of Missouri the communication pitfalls that we have and the gaps. And so once they did that and they did the look after, so they called it a hot wash. Once they looked at that, they saw the communication gaps, and so that was really one of the drivers of streamlining the communication at the local, regional, state level, so that our fire department could communicate with other fire departments within the region and the state. The same thing with EMS and with law enforcement. So the Highway Patrol has their own type of communication, so their own radio system.
Right.
And then the fire departments each have they have their own frequencies if they're on analog or if they're on digital.
Digital.
And so the Most Win system, which is what the RSOC has funded, has been a digital system that we've used and that we've been trying to drive people either to a dual band so that they could communicate locally on the analog system
Right.
or on the digital system. The only problem with that is all of that is expensive.
It is very expensive.
Very expensive.
And I think the city just went to a new system not long ago, to where I know they ran a new up on their water tower out there, out off 32. They just ran a new system for their new communication system. So, I mean, and I think that was a dual band, if I'm not mistaken.
So Most One is putting up 700 megahertz towers, and I think there was one coming to Dent County. If it's not already in place, it's going to be in place this year, and that's to increase the coverage. Most of those radios that they're funding are mobile radios, so they're not the handheld portables, and they have to use repeaters, and so they're standing up more towers every year to increase the coverage.
Sure.
And our area, because of our because of our peaks
Terrain.
and valleys and terrain
Yeah.
and stuff, was noted to be big gaps in our coverage, and so they have noticed that, and they're working to improve that.
And another issue you do have is the National Forest, National Park Service. They don't allow those towers in there to be built. And a lot of times you can't disturb the ground, and you have to do a lot of red tape cutting there, don't you?
Yes, yeah, and thankfully on that side, the state takes care of that, and so they keep the board apprised of where they're putting towers in and future towers where they're wanting to put towers in and what they're working on and stuff. So we meet quarterly, and then the chair of chairs meets at the state level, and so they're really good to keep us updated and stuff.
Difference between those digital and the analog radios you could get for a little bit longer distance. It would fade in and out, though. You get a little rush here. Digital is all pixelated. If and everybody ever seen their TV with the pixelation, you see little dots everywhere.
Yes.
Okay, it's the same thing in the audio. It does exactly the same thing.
Yep.
And when you lose it, you lose it. It's gone.
Yeah, you either have the service or you don't.
That's
it
right.
doesn't. It's not a get to the top of the hill type of a thing.
Yeah. So the nice thing about the analog, that's why the dual band is so important, because if you do lose the digital and flip it on the analog, you may still be able to get them.
Yep. And one of the things that is available through through RSOC via the state is if we did have like a major event in this county and we needed to make sure that we had communications, they actually have mobile communications, so they can actually stand up a mobile tower, and they could bring that down to this area.
A portable mobile tower.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty awesome to see. They've had that out in demonstrations, and they've used it across the state for different types of events. I don't remember off the top of my head which ones, but big groups gather. They try to bring in the communications in case something happens, and they've used it for tornado events and events like Mother Nature events that have wiped out towers or communications in areas. They've been able to bring those in. Stand that up so that communications is it's not having to build a new tower.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I know when we had our derecho, I know the only way out for a while was basically satellite radio. I know those are very expensive, which are still there. They're still there. It's not used very often, but it is still available. But I thought I saw one of those towers actually come down here for a short period of time with the fire department, and they put up like 25 feet tall. But it's a tower,
right?
And you could. I think they needed to communicate to the highway department and the sheriff's department. So, sheriff's department's close enough. Highway department, I think it would actually relay through the sheriff's department or city department. But was able to get that out there because nobody could call.
Right.
You had no phone service. You had no cell phone service.
Yes.
If you did, it was spotty at best.
Right.
And as
nothing reliable.
No, nothing reliable. And then as you were going through trying to pick up after yourself, people don't realize how bad those disasters can happen. We talked to at many of the Board of Aldermen meetings, how many poles, if we had a tornado, could we replace with our current stock?
Right.
And they usually stock 30, 35. You think about 30, 35, just go down 19, 35 poles.
Easy.
That's not even a half mile,
Yeah.
And so you think about that, how long would it take to rebuild your system? And
Right.
you can understand why a portable tower like that would
Yeah.
be so key.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's something that I feel like is important for someone to be a part of that board, so that we're able to be aware of the resources that's
Hmm.
available to us from the regional and state, and also to make sure that we're aware of the grant money that's available to us. And it's one of those things where if you're a part of the group, it's a little easier to be aware of what's coming down the pike as far
Right.
as the dollars and what's required to get those different grants and things like that. So it's been a wonderful group to work with. MRPC does a great job of keeping us in line and keeping us organized.
Keeping
They're
us
a
in line.
big part of that. Yes, they keep us organized.
Well, that's great to hear because they do a fantastic job.
Yes.
Being in the emergency department, obviously emergency responders that's all part of what this is all about, and that's why it's so
Yes.
key to keep your thumb on the pulse of what's going on there. We've got those new ambulances, and I know they've been getting wrapped here for a while. Do we
Yes.
have those in yet? Are they now operational?
One is on the campus now and
Okay.
done, and then one is getting wrapped, I believe now. So yeah, the new one is out, and it looks good. It looks good. So I don't know when the other one will be back yet, but
But soon.
we're getting there.
But
Yeah,
soon. It
yeah.
takes some time. So after you left the emergency department and you went into these other chores and came back, what had changed in your eyes? What had changed in the ED
Well,
from the time you left? Now you're back.
so the ED and like all of us has gone through COVID, and so they the ED staff did a great job of taking care of those patients through COVID and stuff.
That had to be
Staffing
hard.
that was very hard on them. It's a lot of them are still reeling from the fatigue of taking care of sick patients. And sometimes they were taking care of sick patients for days at a time because they couldn't get beds anywhere else.
Right.
And those patients that were used to, maybe getting transferred within an hour, a couple hours or so, were a couple days. So the staff are really reeling from that and are building back up from that. One of the first things that I did was tasked with when I came back to the ER was to coordinate the implementation of a different module within our electronic health
Right.
record. So it's called EDIS, which is the Emergency Department Information System. It's the ER version of our evidence system. So the
Okay.
hospital is on Evident or CPSI across the clinic, in the hospital, and in the emergency department. So if you're a patient and you're seen in our clinic, say maybe you were seen in the clinic a couple days ago and you come into our emergency department, we have access right away to the notes that were created in the ER, in the clinic, and we also can see if maybe you had any scripts or prescriptions that were written or anything like that.
So for many years that was not the case.
That was not the case. Yes, we at one point in time, the hospital, the clinic, and the ER were all on separate EHRs. And so that streamline, the staff just went live with that on March 14th. So we're almost a month in to that new system. So all the staff are learning the new system, making sure that we're getting everything. Any new system, it doesn't matter if you're kind of familiar with it or not.
Right.
Any new system has new processes, new workflows that go with it, things like that.
And
so
as soon as you get used to it, they'll update it.
as soon as they get used to it, they update it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something, just making sure that they're aware of, what we're doing with that, and we had for a while that, we had some maybe longer times because it takes a little bit longer and on the computer world to make sure you have all the boxes clicked or things like that. So that has been live. We've been doing a lot of training with that. So the staff has gotten through that. They did a wonderful job. They really took the training to heart. I had staff that attended multiple sessions, and they want to learn it. They want to make sure that they're proficient with it. They want to use it to the best of their ability and to the best of the capability of the system. Not every system is perfect.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be great if it was, but
Plug and play, right?
yes, exactly. But it's just not quite like that. But this is a really good system for the ER. It has its quirks, but we're all quirky, so it works. It fits right in with us, so it's great.
Well, and the hospital was, go back a couple of years, almost 2.5 years now, looking at a whole different system for the entire hospital, and they tried to implement that. Then the company that made that system actually got bought out, and it all kind of came to a grinding halt until all that could be worked out. Well, then it never really ever got rectified.
Right.
CPSI is what the hospital's been using for a long time, the main hospital.
Yes.
And then it just makes sense for you to get that module that would work for the emergency department. So it just that's a no-brainer.
I think our first electronic health record was CPSI. I think we've been with CPSI the whole time that we've been on computers. So,
long time. So anyway, so it makes sense. Stay with that, and I know that the board here, I think about 4 months or 5 months ago, actually, said that we don't even want that other system anymore. And I know there's some negotiations had to be made there, but nonetheless, it was unfortunately at that time was all part of that spiral that we hit. That was going on, and they couldn't get that implemented, and every department was trying to work on that and get it updated, and it wasn't working. It was a mess, and then they sold, and then they put everything on hold, and then COVID hits, and then, man, everything is just crazy. Absolutely insane. So, nothing that anybody could do about it, but unfortunately, it just all didn't work out the way it anticipated.
I think the staff at the hospital did a great job of riding the roller coaster that went along with all that.
Gosh,
I mean, they had COVID going on, they had training going on, they had the changes with trying to get to the new EHR and all that kind of stuff, and then really those frontline workers kept the patient in the forefront of their mind, and they were really riding that roller coaster, but they were doing it and taking care of our patients. And so I think they really did a great job with, at the end of the day, they were keeping their patients at the front of the importance. They knew that our patients are the most important thing we have to deal with. So they were taking it in stride. I give them a lot of credit for that. They were doing really good.
I happened to have, when I had my issue of COVID and I had to go into the ED, and people did a great job. I mean, it was amazing. You had to wait, and they were always, you didn't know if you had COVID or not. They brought you in. They knew they had to run tests. They take you in and run a test. They do the different things. They had to take a COVID test for everybody.
Right.
So they did a tremendous job. I mean, I was in, you're there for a while because they're taking tests, and they got to get the results and then let you know.
Yeah.
I remember I had an MRI, and I had a CAT scan, and then I also had chest X-rays, and different things were done, and then they took my blood like twice. Of course, COVID test in there, and I'm thinking, well, I'm ready to go home, guys. There's nothing wrong with me. I could walk out of here. And then they came back and said, you're not going anywhere, because of the reason they took my blood twice, because my creatinine levels had gotten over 4. And they said, you're not leaving. We have to pump you with some fluids, a lot of fluids. I had to hope your kidneys don't shut down. And, it's harsh realization. I mean, you don't feel bad, but you're in there, and all the tests are telling you. That's why they took it twice. They couldn't believe it was that far out of range. Normally, my creatinine level right around 1 all the time. And one of the nice things by being in the hospital and always going to the health fairs at the time was they had all those records. They knew on a...
They were able to
3 times a year you could see where my creatinine level was, and then all of a sudden now it's way up.
Yeah.
And so, yes, when they took it the second time, just in case there was something wrong, that's just a double check. And then pretty well, you're not going anywhere. We're gonna get your room, and you're gonna stay here. And at that time, with COVID, you got your room, and then they had to go through. I always kind of call it the hazmat suits.
Yep.
And I always
Yeah.
felt so bad because every time something would go wrong, and you gotta go buzz the nurse, and they gotta put all that garb on,
Yeah.
and then throw it all away, and it's just costing the hospital a ton of
Yeah.
money,
Yeah.
for no, to me it was for no reason, but I mean I know there were reasons to it, but it just seemed, man, oh man, you got to put all that on, and then as you're walking out the door, you're disposing of it so you don't walk out in the hallway with it in case there's something there. Wow.
Yeah.
And that had to be tough on nurses and the staff because, gosh, I can just imagine how much time you waste just putting all that stuff on.
Yeah. COVID in general, for the healthcare sector, stressed anyone that wasn't used to working. That there's a hospital in Nebraska that is the bio hospital. Like that's where we would send people that had these weird viruses and things like
Right.
that, and most of the general hospitals were just used to sending, you have something really bad, sickly wrong with you. It could be a virus or something like that. It's a hazmat thing or whatever. They're sending you on, and COVID really demonstrated the need for all the hospitals to at least have a working knowledge
Sure.
of how to deal with unknowns. And COVID was such an unknown at the beginning that we did the best that we could do, and I think that's what all healthcare providers, that was the goal, is to take care of the patient and do the best that they could do. And our nurses and our healthcare workers all did that. I was, I'm still very proud of the fact that in Salem, Missouri, you were cared for the
Oh, yeah.
best you could be. It doesn't matter if you didn't have to go to a big Barnes or a big hospital somewhere else or a tertiary care, because we may not have been used to it, but we dug in and we did what we had to do to take care of our patients.
But they weren't used to it either.
They weren't used to it either. Nope, they weren't. And it's still, we're still seeing the trickle effects of some of the staffing issues that the larger hospitals are having, as far as like some of our transfer times and getting a bed from some of those tertiary care centers, because they're, we have. Staffing is always a concern
Sure.
for any hospital, any healthcare worker,
Right.
and really anywhere anymore. It's not just healthcare, but those bigger hospitals are seeing the same thing. It's just what may take one or two, maybe nurses that leave a department or leave the hospital, makes a big impact on us. It's for them. It's double, triple that, and they have whole departments, whole floors that have no patients in them because they can't staff the beds. So it's kind of interesting how what COVID has done for staffing and the impacts of that. Our staff in the ER, COVID shut down almost all outside training opportunities.
Exactly.
And they weren't able to go and get the certifications that they have always been able to keep up with. And so now that's one of the things that we're doing, is updating and getting people into actual classes again so that we can update our certifications. And we're able to keep our basic stuff, but we're like Cardinal Glennon's getting ready to come down in May, and they're going to be doing an emergency childbirth class for us, and they do the skills portion, and so we do some online, and then they'll come down and they'll work with our equipment and make sure that we're proficient in emergency childbirth and maternal health. It's not something that we're equipped to do at the hospital.
No, we had a birth here a few months ago, didn't we?
Exactly, but we have patients that they can't make it to their OB/GYNs, and or something happens and they need emergency care. And so our goal at the hospital is to make sure that we're prepared for anything that comes in the door.
The emergency department, and I remember when you were working with the STEMI protocol and the stroke protocol and working through that, virtually everything you have is structured. I mean, if somebody comes in with a broken leg, you do this, and this.
Right.
If they come in with a heart attack, you do this, and this. If it's a stroke, it's this. Pretty much everything is laid out black and white,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, most like strokes and STEMIs are protocol driven. So there's statewide and regional protocols that we go by, and so that every hospital that's a stroke or STEMI certified hospital is providing the same level of care. That's the whole purpose that we wanted to be able to do strokes and STEMIs, and then depending on what it is, it's standard of care as really what drives that. What if you come in with a broken leg, there's certain things that we're going to do within our capabilities and get you to either where you need to go or take care of you so that you can go to those appointments
Right.
after the fact.
Sometimes it's just stabilizing you because if it's a compound fracture, that's not something that
Right,
usually
right. We're not going to
says.
be able to do surgery
Yeah,
for you or something like that.
but the patient's still in pain, but you're going to do the best to alleviate the pain, get the swelling
Right,
down as much as possible.
right. Yep.
And that's what I think sometimes people say, I'm going to go to the hospital, I got to, I have this or this or this. May not be something Salem specializes in. They're going to move you on,
Right.
but they're going to stabilize you to where it's going to be as most comfortable as they can to get
Right.
you to a location. If you try and drive to that location on your own with a broken leg, throbbing and bleeding or something of that nature, especially a compound fracture that breaks the skin, you can be in a lot of trouble.
Yep,
You really
can be.
need to utilize your local hospital.
Yep. The emergency department here, we go by EMTALA laws, so we have regulations that are guiding the care and the process that we have to take as far as if you came in the door and things like that. But we also our goal is to check to see if you have an emergency medical condition and stabilize that. And if we don't have this resources at the hospital, then we will coordinate getting you the care that you need, getting you that definitive care. So if you do need surgery or something like that, that we're able to contact those hospitals and make sure that we have a physician that's going to accept you and different things like that, depending on what your needs are. So yeah.
A lot of stuff goes on behind the scenes, doesn't it? I mean,
It does.
I really, I was amazed. I hadn't been in a hospital until I was here since I was like 13. And the only reason I was in there was for my knees because they kept getting out. And anyway, I was there for a whole week, and they did one test a day. I thought, this is the craziest thing in the world. I can do all these tests in one day and be out of here, but that's not what they wanted to do. They wanted to make sure over time how this would react anyway. But it had been a long time. I had not been admitted into a hospital, so things had changed drastically. And how many people actually are working behind the scenes that I don't think half the people who are admitted ever see. You've got obviously your cooks and your janitorial staff, and you've got nurses, but you got different levels of nurses, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in the emergency department, we staff with registered nurses. Different departments will utilize LPNs and aides, but your emergency room staff, the EMS department, they'll come in and help in the ER when we're busy and things like that as well. But it's usually your two RNs, and they do a lot. They may not be in your room, but they may be either making sure your labs are back or the physician knows about them, things like that. Or if you are going to need to be transferred, they're doing all the phone calls and they're coordinating that, making sure that the doctors, because in order to transfer a patient, the physicians have to talk to each other. We can't just say, hey, hospital over here, we're going to send you a patient, and they're in the car, or they're in the ambulance, and they're on their way. The physicians actually have to talk to each other, and the patient has to be accepted. And sometimes it depends on insurance. When you come into the ER, we're not going to ask you about your insurance, but if you ever have to get transferred, or
They may
ask about your insurance. And so it's a little bit more detail than when you first walk in the door for us that they may want to know about. And depending on, some of our insurance at the hospital, I think there's some hospitals in Springfield that doesn't accept our insurance, so we're out of network.
Right.
And we, sometimes we have to make sure our patients know about that.
And that's always been a bugaboo with me, in network, out of network. I mean, if you're sick and you need assistance, I know if you go out of network, a lot of times they don't cover it, and that really is not fair to the patient who's paying all these high premiums, and it doesn't seem to matter.
Yeah, and that's something in the ER. We don't really know about your insurance information. We don't. That's not. Our goal is to take care of you, and unfortunately, the billing side of things, the insurance side of things, does come after, and or fortunately, I mean, it's one of those, kind of depends on which direction you're coming
Yeah. Oh,
from.
yeah.
But there's times when, if we need to transfer you, say you're a VA patient, we have to talk to the VA before we can transfer you or before we can even admit you. And that's something that not all of our VA patients understand. It's not because we want to call them or that we really feel like we need to call them, but and we don't want you as a VA patient to get stuck with a bill or be responsible, because if the VA doesn't approve your transfer or your admission, then they can get stuck with the bill, and we've had that happen a couple times in the distant past, and that's why
Wow.
we make some of those phone calls, so that again, we're taking care of the patient. We just we're not necessarily taking care of their medical needs at that moment, but
Sure.
we don't want them to.
Well, that's a lot of stress, though.
That's a lot of stress.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
and it does
absolutely
impact
is.
them. Yeah.
It absolutely is. And so, I think a lot of people don't realize there's different types of hospitals now. There's private hospitals, there's
Yes.
public hospitals, there's tax-based hospitals.
Yes.
And Salem is a tax-based hospital.
Yes.
So they really can't refuse anybody
Right.
to have service in the emergency department.
Yeah.
But if you go to a private hospital, they can actually ask you to leave.
Yeah.
They
So
don't have to take you.
the EMTALA requirements, any emergency department, they have to rule out an emergency medical condition. So even those private hospitals would have to go under the EMTALA, but that doesn't mean they have to do anything.
Wow.
If you're breathing and
But they can
you look
determine
good.
if it's an emergency or not, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, they can.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting, but our emergency department will see anybody, and we'll take care of your needs, definitely. And we have the staff. I didn't figure that up, but at one point in time, our ER staff, they're in the hundreds of years of experience as far as the number of years nursing that some of them have been in, and we have nurses that have come from trauma centers and things like that, and move back to the area, and are working in our hospital. So they're used to, they've been in bigger hospitals and things like that. And then we have nurses that have years and years of experience and that type of stuff. So it's pretty interesting.
We're talking with Tabitha, the Stanfast Emergency Department. I got one more question to ask you, and I know you got to go back to work. I know you'd
Okay.
rather stay here all day, but
Okay.
you can't do that. With the new Saturday clinic hours, how has that helped the emergency department? Maybe it taken a few people away from you because they can go walk in at the clinic. How's that all worked out?
I think it's worked out really well. I believe they've had between like 6 and 10 patients on Saturdays. I think is it 10 to 2, I think is their hours.
9 to 2.
9
I
to
think,
2.
yeah.
And it has helped because those patients that may not be of a higher acuity, so some of the sniffles or the strep throats and things like that are more clinic type of things, it keeps them from being in the ER where they are maybe exposed to sicker patients, but it also I feel like it gets them in faster. It gets them in and out faster instead of potentially waiting for us. Sometimes the waits in the ER can be a little long, depending on what we have going on in the back. So
Right.
the clinic is an opportunity to, if you don't feel like you have an emergency but you need to see a doctor, it's a great place to start. If that's something that they're like, you probably do need to be seen in the ER, they'll definitely let you know that. But
Sure.
it's great for that, and I think it's reduced the waits quite a bit for those patients. So
And for those people who do go to the emergency department, and I don't mean another question here, but the immediacy of your treatment is based on the severity
it
that
is.
you have,
Mhm.
right?
Yep. So we try to get you in and get you triaged. So we want a nurse to see you as soon as possible, as soon as you walk in the door. And that's one of the things with the new EHR. It actually gets you into the computer faster than the old version was doing. So within 30 seconds to a minute, you're on our computer. So the nurses know that you're here and need to be seen. And we do try. Our goal is, I think, within 10 minutes. That doesn't always happen if we're busy, but it does get you in, and then we get you back and seen as soon as possible.
Fantastic. You guys do a tremendous job. I always appreciate the great work that they do.
Thanks.
And I can speak that firsthand. I was there.
Thank you.
Got the free ride in from the press box, and it was Wasn't very far to drive.
Yeah, there you go.
I think one of the drivers said enjoy the scenery. I said it's dark. I can't see it. I'm back here. I can't see nothing.
Exactly.
But anyway, do appreciate all the great work that our emergency department does. Probably unsung heroes back there more than anybody can even realize, because you don't hear names. You don't really pay too much attention, because when you're in an emergency department, you're really probably not at your finest.
Exactly. Yeah. Our ER,
or you wouldn't be there.
I feel like our ER staff are to be applauded. They do a great job.
They
Yes,
really do. And
thank you.
we thank you for all of your dedication to that department, and you really have done an outstanding job, Tabitha. And thank you for all the different departments you've served in and your length at the hospital. You've been there how many years now?
16.
16?
I think. I stopped counting.
I would too. It's been there a while. Anyway,
Yes.
but we appreciate that.
Thanks,
And really the fine job that you have done. And thank you again for coming in. If anybody has any questions about the emergency department, can they give you a call?
They sure can.
Sure.
Call us at the hospital, 729-6626, and just ask for the emergency department.
Very good. Tabitha Stanfast, the emergency department, our featured guest on our spotlight on SMH, the Salem Memorial Hospital. Thanks again, Tabitha, for coming in and spending some time with us.
Thanks, Dan.
Keep it here, Civic Happening.